It's property tax deadline day, so I thought I'd talk for a moment about the different approaches of the town of Smithers and the village of Telkwa in terms of how they're managing their budgets and what the results are for our communities and for the region in general, because I think there's a bit of a challenge when, as a region, we've joined forces and we have one community that seems to be managing their finances differently. So I have the notice from the village of Telkwa here for my own property taxes. And this year, again, we have a 0% property tax increase. And again, this pattern of very low or negligible tax increases in Telkwa goes back at least 6 years now. And interestingly, it doesn't mean that Telkwa is not spending. It's quite the opposite, actually. Telkwa has done a very good job on focusing what its priorities should be in terms of core infrastructure. Again, has pushed very hard for grant funding to be able to take care of that core infrastructure, its water system, its sewers. And as a result is actually spending more money than Telkwa has ever spent before, and at the same time being able to keep the village functioning and looking good for, again, a 0% tax increase. By comparison, the town of Smithers this year announced an 11% tax increase. And again, they have access to the same Northern Infrastructure Grant that Telkwa does. Telkwa's been using it to leverage for funding for other grants to work on their really important core infrastructure. And Smithers, instead, with $10 million or over $10 million coming in this grant funding, has taken a very different approach of both how it's being spent. So Smithers, out of that fund, is allocating over $1 million to a landscaping project on Main Street this year, and also has allocated over $2 million out of that Northern Infrastructure Grant to spending on the new library. And what's interesting is they've also taken an approach of having a legacy fund. There's a bylaw that says there should be at least $5 million left in that at all times. Now, that 11% tax increase, again, the mayor's statement was that tax increase was happening because the town needs to tax more to pay for its roads and sidewalks. The challenge there is that those roads and sidewalks, those capital improvements, could be paid for with the same fund. In fact, that fund, many would argue, myself included, is intended to pay for water and sewer and really important core infrastructure. And the town instead is utilizing that fund to pay for the library and Main Street landscaping, and to keep money in the fund, not the $5 million that they have written the bylaw for, but still keeping several million in the fund and increasing taxes to pay for core infrastructure. And at the same time, it's just come out that Smithers just received a written warning from the province because of their wastewater treatment discharges have been well over the allowable limit by the province. And again, that's a real threat to the town. If they are fined, the minimum fine is $500,000. That can go up to $6 million. So again, my feeling is that Smithers should be doing things very differently. That they should be prioritizing this grant funding and spending it on their water and sewer systems, their roads, their sidewalks, their core infrastructure, and instead should be going to their citizens for spending like landscaping, spending like the library, and making sure that they're on the right track with that. And for me, it was very concerning to see several $million allocated in their budget to the library when that question has not even gone to the people in Smithers. And again, I'm not against the library. I think that Smithers is blessed with a fantastic, very creative and forward-thinking librarian. Wendy is doing an awesome job, and I really do believe that the town supports a good facility. But the approach has, in my opinion, been quite backwards. And I think that approach has really damaged Smithers' prospects in terms of grant funding from the province at a time where we've just come through a massive amount of public spending to get people through this pandemic. Smithers is somehow still prioritizing things that the province might not see as being as essential as water and sewers and roads. And at the same time, by having a legacy fund is really telling the province that, you know, it's great that we got all of this money, but we really don't need it right now. And so we're going to put it in a bank account and let it sit there. Now, why is this a challenge for people not just in Smithers, but also in Telkwa and in every community from Vanderhoof all the way out to Haida Gwaii? And that's because we're all members of something called the Northwest Resource Benefits Alliance. And when you have one community that gets this funding that actually directly came out of that initiative, and they kind of go, thanks a lot for all that money, but we really don't need it that much right now, so we're going to put it into a bank account, or we're going to spend it on landscaping Main Street, or we're going to put it towards a new library. What that tells the province is that while we've been crying to them saying how desperate our need is for funding to deal with our core infrastructure, that there are member communities here that actually are saying in return, thanks for all that money, but you know, we're wealthy enough as it is that we can sort of put that aside for now, or we can spend it on you know, items that are not of that core infrastructure nature. And I think that's a really troubling signal. I hope that Smithers Council turns their tone or approach to grant funding and starts emphasizing that they are a regional hub, that they spend that money on things like roads and sidewalks, and also obviously spend it on issues like their wastewater treatment plant, which again, we're talking about 5 years where they've been well over the limit and again, haven't been reporting it correctly. So that's really troubling. And again, I give a huge thumbs up to Telkwa. I think they've been doing a really good job moving forward, both with their infrastructure needs and also for planning for growth in the community. For Smithers, you know, I really hope that they rethink their approach to grant funding and what their spending priorities are and how they're going to go about that. Because again, for those sorts of spending initiatives like the landscaping, like the library, I think those, when you're talking about millions of dollars, again, over $1 million for the landscaping and over $2 million just out of that fund for the library, that they should be going to the people in the town for that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents worth, and hopefully we'll see a bit of a shift in the future. Thank you.